Taro stared at the glowing display, brow furrowed like a map of disappointment. It was hard not to when you were told your entire species was essentially on a cosmic timeout. Banned from FTL travel, all because we can't stop blowing each other up. Mistral, fiddling with a screwdriver in a way that suggested it might soon become a makeshift weapon, snorted. To be fair, we do have a knack for self-destructive tendencies. A knack? Taro raised an eyebrow, the universal gesture for "are you kidding me?" We perfected it to a goddamn art form. Mistral shrugged, her shoulders barely visible under the grease-stained jumpsuit that proclaimed her allegiance to the cult of fix-it-yourself-or-die trying. At least we're consistent. Quillen, sprawled in a chair that seemed one protest away from complete collapse, tossed a crumpled paper ball at them. Consistent doesn't get us to Alpha Centauri, does it? The room they were in, if you could call it a room, was more of a sad excuse for a bunker. Metal walls that had seen better days. Flickering fluorescent lights that offered as much comfort as a dentist's waiting room. And the smell, somewhere between burnt coffee and despair. So, we're going with the sports tournament plan then. Compete, win, get humanity off the naughty list, Mistral asked, not looking up from her screwdriver, now dangerously close to becoming a shank. Yeah, because that's the only plan that doesn't involve mass extinction, Taro replied dryly. And besides, how hard can it be to win a cosmic game of dodgeball or whatever they are playing? Quillen let out a laugh that sounded more like a cough. Considering we're up against species with limbs designed specifically for these sports, probably quite hard. Oh, come on. We've got you, the former Galactic Games champion. Taro clapped Quillen on the back with a smile that was equal parts reassuring and condescending. Former being the operative word, mate. I was the champion before I had the knees of a 90-year-old, Quillen grumbled, rubbing his leg as if trying to make a genie appear. Let's face it, Mistral interjected, we're not exactly the A-team, but we have one advantage they don't. Quillen and Taro looked at her expectantly, like puppies waiting for a treat. Desperation, she said with a grin that was more feral than friendly. Taro crossed his arms, squinting at the universe's digital representation of Earth, still orbiting in its virtual prison. Desperation and a willingness to cheat, steal, and probably bribe. Now you're talking, Mistral said approvingly. A beep from the console interrupted their brainstorming session, the screen shifting to show an official-looking notice. Taro groaned. What now? Mistral tapped a few keys. It's a message from the Universal Council. Probably another reminder about our violent tendencies, Quillen sighed. What? Are they going to start fining us every time we get into a bar fight? Taro raised his glass as if making a toast. Here's to hoping. Maybe they'll throw in free therapy sessions. The message opened, displaying in neat, sterile text. Humanity is hereby barred from participating in any form of FTL activities until it can prove its capability for peaceful coexistence. It was signed with enough bureaucratic flourish to make a politician blush. Prove peaceful coexistence, Taro snorted. Might as well ask us to turn water into wine. I think they did that once, Quillen said, smirking. Yeah, and look how that turned out. Mistral stood, stretching her back with a series of pops that echoed like gunfire in the confined space. Guess we better start training then. Taro nodded, glancing at the digital Earth again. Training for the tournament or peaceful coexistence? Both, Mistral replied, pushing her hair out of her eyes and leaving a streak of oil across her forehead. Though I suspect one is significantly more achievable than the other. Quillen rose, joints creaking in protest. Let's focus on the tournament first. Worst case, we lose and confirm everyone's low expectations of us. Best case, we win and get back to doing what we do best. Blowing things up, Taro asked, a smirk in his voice. Exploring, Quillen corrected, and maybe blowing up the occasional asteroid. Mistral sniggered, already packing away her tools with the efficiency of someone who's been kicked out of more places than she'd like to admit. One step at a time, huh? Taro, still staring at the display as if willing it to change, finally turned away. Yeah, one step at a time. And that was how humanity's best, or perhaps just last, hope for reclaiming the stars was found, in a dingy bunker with nothing but sarcasm, desperation, and a misplaced sense of optimism. The tournament loomed large in their minds, a beacon of chance and chaos. But for now, there was only the next step, the next plan, and of course the next beer. To reclaiming our rightful place among the stars, Taro declared, raising an imaginary glass. Mistral and Quillen joined the pantomime, clinking invisible drinks and laughing at the absurdity of the universe. Here's to humanity, Mistral added, voice dripping with irony. And may we never change, Quillen finished. The universe rumbled on outside, uncaring and infinite. But for these three in their little patch of chaos there was hope. Hope tethered with sarcasm and bound with dark humor, just the way they liked it. You think they'll even let us compete? Taro asked, a hint of genuine concern in his voice. Depends, said Quillen. Maybe if we promise not to hit anyone, Mistral chuckled. We'd be disqualified for false advertising, Taro sighed, a long-suffering noise that spoke volumes. All right, let's get to work then. We've got a galaxy to convince and egos to inflate. With that, they settled in, the hum of the universe outside their door a constant reminder of what was at stake. The stars awaited, indifferent yet tantalizingly close. All they had to do was reach out and grab them, preferably without blowing anything up in the process. Taro stood in the bunker's corner, squinting at the holo display that flickered uncertainly as if it might die of boredom at any moment. He had the look of a man who'd just been told the universe was laughing at him. Again. So, this tournament. It's a bit more intense than we thought. Mistral, ever the optimist, was hunched over the workbench, examining a tiny circuit board with the intensity of a hawk eyeing a particularly juicy rabbit. Define intense, she said, not looking up. Like your morning coffee or like sticking your hand in a blender. More like playing tag with rabid velociraptors, Taro replied, grimacing as he fiddled with a control on the screen. It's called the Galactic Gauntlet, and from what this says, it's a blood sport. Literally, Quillen, half dozing in a chair that seemed to be held together by wishes and duct tape, perked up. Blood sport, you say? Haven't seen one of those since. Well, since the last time I was in a bar on Mars during Happy Hour. Yeah. But this isn't just about spilling blood, Taro explained, flipping through the tournament's rules with a finger that left a smudge on the screen. It's designed for species with about 6 extra limbs and a penchant for extreme violence. Sounds like the kind of warm welcome I'd expect from the universe, Mistral quipped, finally setting down her screwdriver. So we're screwed then. Not exactly, Taro said, a mischievous glint in his eye. We're human. We've got something they don't. Let me guess, Quillen said, counting on his fingers. Stubbornness, a reckless disregard for personal safety, and an unhealthy obsession with sugary drinks and creativity, Taro added, ignoring the fact that he wasn't exactly denying the other points. We think sideways. While they're expecting us to play by the rules, we can, you know. Not, Mistral chuckled darkly. So what's the plan? We going to charm them to death with our winning personalities? No, but we'll beat them with adaptability, Taro replied, a plan forming like a thunderstorm in his mind. We use what they don't expect. Go unpredictable. Turn their strengths against them. Quillen grunted, shifting in his chair as if trying to find a position that didn't remind him of his advancing age. So basically we play dirty, exactly, Taro said, nodding with all the enthusiasm of a man who just discovered a loophole in a death sentence. The only rule is there are no rules. Well, except for not killing each other. That's frowned upon. That's comforting, Mistral muttered. So, we're the underdogs, yay us. Nothing like being the universe's favorite punching bag to up the stakes. Taro tapped a few keys, bringing up footage of previous tournaments. The screen showed beings of all shapes and sizes, some with limbs that defied logic, others with skin that looked more like armor than flesh. They were engaged in an organized chaos of what looked like a cross between rugby and gladiatorial combat, with the occasional laser blast for good measure. See, Taro said with a flourish. If we're going to win this, we need a strategy. Something they won't see coming, like what? Quillen asked, finally sitting up straight, his interest piqued. You got an ace up your sleeve, more like a grenade, Taro replied. We need to use their own tactics against them. Surprise, misdirection, and a healthy dose of chaos. Mistral raised an eyebrow, looking intrigued despite herself. Chaos we can do. But what about the rest? Quillen's got us covered on that front, Taro said, clapping his friend on the shoulder. We just need to get him back in shape. Oh, is that all? Quillen said, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. And here I was, thinking you'd ask me to do something hard. No pain, no gain, Mistral said with a shrug. Consider it payback for all those years you spent charming your way out of trouble. Taro pulled up a training regimen, a draconian sequence of exercises designed to turn any participant into a weaponized athlete. According to this, we've got about 3 weeks to turn Quillen into something resembling a contender, 3 weeks to transform from a washed-up champion to a galactic superstar, Quillen mused. What could go wrong? Nothing we can't fix, Mistral said, already eyeing a particularly brutal-looking drill with the same interest a cat might show a mouse. So we train, we strategize, and we pray a little praying. Taro said with a smirk. I thought you were all about fixing things yourself. Can't hurt to cover all bases, she replied, dragging out a training mat that seemed to have more stains than fabric. Besides, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the universe loves irony. True enough, Taro said, watching Quillen stretch with the grace of a rusty robot. Just remember, it's us against the universe. We're not here to make friends. Good, Quillen said, groaning as he bent down to touch his toes. I'm awful at small talk anyway. They got to work. The bunker's confined space filled with the sounds of grunts, curses, and the occasional triumphant holler as Quillen managed a particularly difficult maneuver. There was no magic, no sudden breakthroughs, just the steady, grueling grind of turning human potential into something a bit more extraordinary. All right, break time, Mistral called, tossing Quillen a bottle of water. Don't want to kill you before the tournament even begins. Quillen took it gratefully, taking a long swig before collapsing back into his chair. You know, if this whole saving humanity thing doesn't work out, I hear they're hiring for circus strongmen. They'd chew you up and spit you out, Mistral said, her expression half amused, half admiring. And besides, we need you here to get us through this mess. Don't worry, Quillen said, stretching his legs out. I'm not going anywhere. Taro watched them, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. This wasn't just about FTL travel anymore. It was about proving they could stand shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the galaxy and maybe, just maybe, come out on top. So, what's next? Quillen asked, catching his breath. Next, we take what we've learned and figure out how to use it against them, Taro said, a determined gleam in his eye. We'll do what humans do best. Adapt, improvise, and make them wish they'd never underestimated us. Sounds like a plan, Mistral said, rising to her feet and dusting off her hands. Let's just hope it's a good one. We'll make it good, Taro promised. Because if there's one thing we've got going for us, it's that we're too stubborn to quit. The universe might have laughed at them, might have thrown them in a corner and told them to behave. But Taro, Mistral, and Quillen had no intention of staying put. They were going to kick, claw, and fight their way to the top, one match at a time. Here's to the underdogs, Mistral said, raising her imaginary glass once more. To the ones who don't know when to quit, Quillen added, his voice filled with a new kind of resolve. And Taro, for all his sarcasm and skepticism, found himself believing, if only for a moment, that they might just pull it off. To humanity, he said, the words a promise and a challenge all at once. The bunker might have been a dingy, forgotten corner of the universe, but for now, it was their base, their sanctuary, and the place where they'd forged their path back to the stars. They had a long way to go, but they were just getting started. All right, back to work, Taro ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. We've got a tournament to win. Quillen groaned but got to his feet, determination etched into every line of his weary face. Mistral cracked her knuckles, ready for whatever came next. They were a ragtag bunch with about as much grace as a drunken elephant, but they were all they had. And as far as Taro was concerned, they might just be enough. The universe was big, cruel, and indifferent, but Taro, Mistral, and Quillen were bigger in their own way. They had dreams, and a dream once set in motion could be unstoppable. They'd make the universe see them, acknowledge them, and maybe, just maybe, respect them. "Let's get to it," Taro said, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 futures. "We've got a galaxy to convince." And with that they plunged back into training, the rhythmic thud of Quillen's footfalls a steady, reassuring backdrop to their efforts. The stars might have seemed distant, but they were there, waiting for the taking. All they had to do was reach out and grab them. The universe could laugh all it wanted, but Taro and his crew were about to give it a reason to pause. And maybe, if they were lucky, a reason to cheer. The bunker was alive with an energy that could only be described as barely contained panic. Taro, Quillen, and Mistral huddled around the holo display, which flickered like an old TV on the fritz, displaying the lineup for the first event of the Galactic Gauntlet. The tournament was less a friendly gathering of diverse species and more a cosmic bar brawl with referees. "All right," Taro sighed, flicking a crumb from his sleeve. Breakfast was a luxury they couldn't afford to waste. "We're up against the Cargathians first. From the looks of it, they've got more biceps than brains." "That's comforting," Quillen grinned, flexing an arm that was more muscle memory than actual muscle at this point. "I suppose the plan is to bore them with our human charm," Mistral chuckled, juggling a handful of wires and a distinctly unstable-looking contraption. "Or blind them with our dazzling wit. Either way, we'll leave them baffled. Or dead," Taro added with a shrug. "I'm flexible." As they talked tactics, the holo display decided to glitch in an entirely unhelpful way, swapping their opponent's stats with what looked like a cooking channel. Mistral smacked it twice, and it sputtered back to life, the Cargathians' profiles ominously reappearing. "Look here," she said, pointing at the screen. "They're built like space tanks. We're going to need more than charm and wit to take them down." "Good thing we've got a trump card," Taro said, motioning to Quillen. "Human creativity." Quillen coughed into his fist, looking less like humanity's savior and more like a man who'd just swallowed a bug. "So we improvise. I'm guessing that means no formal battle plan then." "Correct," Taro nodded. "We'll wing it." "You're the best at that, remember," Quillen snorted, adjusting the makeshift armor strapped to his chest, a mismatched ensemble held together by hope and questionable adhesive. "I'm a master of winging it, but if I end up winging my way to the afterlife, I'm blaming you." "Fair enough," Taro replied, his smirk lingering. "Just make sure you put on a good show before you do." The first event was set in a coliseum that looked like it had been designed by a committee of sadists. It was a massive, circular arena with shifting platforms and rotating blades, because apparently balanced footing was for the weak. The crowd, a motley assortment of species, buzzed with excitement. They were here for blood, and Taro couldn't help but feel they were the main course. "Our esteemed human competitors," the announcer's voice boomed, dripping with mockery. "Ready to meet their doom, or dinner if you're a Cargathian." "Nice to know we're appreciated," Mistral muttered, watching Quillen step into the arena with the bravado of a man who'd been dared to chug a bottle of hot sauce. The Cargathians were hulking, four-armed brutes, each arm larger than Quillen's entire body. They clanked into the arena, metal armor gleaming under the harsh lights. "Time to improvise," Taro whispered from the sidelines, fingers crossed behind his back. "Remember, chaos is our ally." Quillen nodded, taking a breath as the starting gong echoed through the arena. The Cargathians charged like freight trains on a vendetta, their roars loud enough to rattle teeth. But Quillen was ready. With a nimbleness that belied his previous complaints of back pain, he dodged their advances, ducking and weaving through their stampede. The Cargathians were strong, but they were about as coordinated as a three-legged dog on ice. "Over here, big guy," Quillen taunted, luring the largest Cargathian toward a platform edge. As the alien lunged, Quillen sidestepped, leaving the enraged creature to tumble into a pit below, a pit filled with what looked suspiciously like electric eels. The crowd gasped, a sound of collective disbelief. The humans weren't just surviving, they were winning. "Nice move," Mistral shouted, her voice barely reaching over the crowd's roar. "I knew all those years of avoiding responsibility would pay off." Emboldened, Quillen engaged the remaining Cargathians, who were now treating him with a mix of caution and confusion. They weren't used to prey that fought back, and definitely not with such flair. Taro watched with bated breath. They needed this win, not just for the tournament but for humanity's dignity, not to mention their continued existence. Quillen danced around, using the shifting platforms to his advantage, letting the Cargathians' own weight and momentum work against them. Another one went down, tripping over a blade that sliced cleaner than a bureaucrat's promise. "Another one bites the dust," Taro muttered, feeling a flicker of hope ignite inside him. Or whatever the hell that is. Finally, it came down to Quillen and the last Cargathian, who appeared to have realized the dangers of recklessness. It circled him warily, 4 eyes watching for any sign of weakness. "Time to put on a show," Quillen called, a grin spreading across his face. "Just remember, no heroic sacrifices," Mistral shouted, waving a tool like a demented cheerleader. "We need you alive for the next round." Quillen nodded and launched into a feint. The Cargathian lunged, and Quillen spun, grabbing a loose piece of machinery from the ground, a leftover from a previous fight or maybe a failed attempt at arena maintenance. He hurled it with all his might, and it struck true, smashing into the alien's face with a crunch that sent it staggering back. "Yes!" Taro pumped his fist as the Cargathian toppled, crashing down with a final thud that reverberated through the arena. The crowd erupted, half in shock and half in reluctant admiration. Humans, it seemed, were more than just punching bags. Quillen saluted the audience, a flourish that was more swagger than ceremony. Thank you. I'll be here all week." The announcer's voice boomed again, this time with a note of genuine surprise. "And the humans take the first event. An unexpected turn of events, folks." Back in the bunker, they celebrated with enthusiasm matched only by their exhaustion. Mistral handed Quillen a bottle of something that might have been water, but based on the expression it elicited, probably wasn't. "Here's to unconventional tactics," Taro said, raising an imaginary glass. "And the fact that we're still breathing." Quillen nodded, looking pleased but pensive. "We won this round, but they'll be watching us now. We've gone from underdogs to targets." "Good," Mistral said, her optimism a defiant glow. "Let them watch. They'll be so busy trying to figure us out they won't see the next trick coming." The victory had given them a glimmer of hope, but it also painted a target on their backs. The tournament's overseers wouldn't take kindly to humans upsetting the status quo. They'd be looking for ways to tip the scales back in their favor. "We need to be ready for anything," Taro cautioned, knowing full well the universe loved to throw curveballs when you least expected it. Quillen stretched, wincing at the bruises blossoming across his skin. "Bring it on. I didn't sign up for this mess because it was easy. I came for the thrill, the challenge, and maybe a little for the chance to stick it to the universe." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Mistral interjected, already tinkering with a new device that looked like it could either win them the next round or blow up in their faces. "We've got a long way to go, and the higher we climb, the further we fall." Taro nodded, scanning the next event details on the flickering holo display. "Let's make sure we're the ones doing the pushing. We've put humanity back on the map. Now we just need to make sure we stay there." "Here's to surviving another day," Quillen toasted, raising his bottle in a mock salute. "And to the fine art of improvisation," Mistral added, her eyes gleaming with mischief. Taro smiled, feeling the familiar spark of defiance. They might have been thrust into a game designed to chew them up and spit them out, but they were still standing. And as long as they had breath in their bodies, they'd keep fighting, keep adapting, and keep proving that humanity was more than just a species to be pitied or feared. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us," Taro said, the weight of their task pressing down but not crushing him. But if we learned anything today, it's that we're capable of more than they'll ever give us credit for. The universe might have been indifferent, but Taro, Mistral, and Quillen were determined to make it pay attention. They were here to stay, and they were just getting started. Once more into the breach, humans against the odds. The stars were waiting, and they were ready to take their place amongst them, one victory at a time. The bunker was abuzz with an energy that had less to do with the victory and more with sheer survival instinct. The sort of energy you'd find in a rat caught in a trap, gnawing furiously at the bars. Taro sat with his back against the wall, feeling the weight of the situation settle over his shoulders like an uncomfortable, itchy blanket. In the middle of the room, Mistral was hunched over the holo display, which, true to form, was having another existential crisis. "Remind me why we bother with this piece of junk," Quillen muttered, throwing a glance at the flickering screen that was showcasing a rather intriguing cooking show about grilling meats that resembled something between an octopus and a cactus. "Because," Mistral said, smacking the side of the display again, "it's the only thing keeping us updated on how we're supposed to die next, and because violence is the only language it understands." She gave it another firm whack, and the display grudgingly switched to the tournament lineup. "The next event," Taro said, leaning over to read the stuttering text, "is called the Asbestos Challenge." "Sounds cozy," Quillen stretched, making a sound like a particularly creaky door. "Asbestos, huh? Is the goal to get cancer first or just asphyxiate? Sounds like another damn death trap," Mistral muttered, her fingers dancing over the controls as she tried to pull up more details. "But get this. I've been digging into the tournament system, and it's not just the arena trying to kill us." Taro raised an eyebrow. "We talking conspiracy, sabotage, or just the usual cosmic middle finger?" "Sabotage," Mistral confirmed, her eyes narrowing. "There's been tampering with our gear. Small stuff mostly, but enough to tilt the odds. They really don't want us winning. And here I thought the universe was just naturally hostile," Quillen said with a wry grin. "Turns out it's personal," Taro shrugged, a gesture that was becoming far too habitual. "Makes sense. We're the underdogs. Nobody likes rooting for a species that's supposed to be in the penalty box. So what's the plan?" "Simple," Mistral said with a grim smile. "We outsmart them. We've got to play the game within the game. And thank the stars for that human creativity they keep underestimating. Let's just hope our creativity doesn't conclude with creative ways to die," Quillen quipped, checking his makeshift armor for any new weak points. The Asbestos Challenge, as it turned out, wasn't named for its carcinogenic qualities. No, this particular event had a more immediate threat. An arena filled with shifting panels that released plumes of toxic gas at random intervals, all while competitors battled to keep from falling through trapdoors opening beneath their feet. "Well," Quillen said, eyeing the arena with a mixture of awe and revulsion, "at least the stage is set for a killer performance." Mistral rolled her eyes, double-checking the air filtration units she'd cobbled together from what looked like a second-hand appliance store. "You know, I really didn't sign up for toxic air and collapsing floors." "None of us did," Taro replied, adjusting his own gear. "But here we are living the dream." The announcement blared through the speakers, welcoming the contestants with all the enthusiasm of a tax auditor reading a particularly dull report. "Welcome to the Asbestos Challenge. Let's see if our contestants can keep their feet and their lungs intact." Quillen took a deep breath, the kind you take when you're not sure if it's your last. "Wish me luck, or don't. Either way, I'm going in." The starting gong sounded, a signal that resonated with the finality of a judge's gavel. Quillen leapt into the fray, straight into a world of chaos and toxic fumes. The floor panels shifted under his feet like a treacherous ocean, and the air was thick with the hiss of gas and the growls of alien competitors. Taro watched from the sidelines, heart pounding in his chest. "He's got this," he murmured, more to convince himself than anyone else. Mistral was less confident. "We'd better hope so. If he doesn't, we'll be the ones cleaning up the mess." Quillen ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding a spray of gas that left one unfortunate alien opponent coughing up something particularly unpleasant looking. With quick, nimble movements, he darted around another competitor, shoving them towards a trapdoor that obligingly opened beneath them. The crowd roared, their bloodlust palpable even through the gas. "Good dodge," Taro called, trying to keep his voice steady. "Keep your head." Quillen flashed a grin, though it quickly turned into a cough as he inadvertently inhaled some of the arena's noxious atmosphere. "I've got this," he rasped, evading a particularly aggressive six-legged adversary with a spin that would have made a ballerina jealous. But the arena wasn't the only thing working against him. Taro's sharp gaze caught a flicker of movement above, a maintenance drone, suspiciously out of place and all too interested in Quillen's position. He nudged Mistral, pointing it out. "That drone," he said, voice low. "It's not just part of the decor, is it?" Mistral frowned, her fingers flying over her makeshift console. "Nope, it's been hacked. They're trying to take him out from above." "Well, isn't that sporting?" Taro muttered, tension knotting his muscles. "Can you do something about it?" Mistral gave a tight nod, eyes narrowing with determination. "I can try." "Keep him alive until I do." Easier said than done, Taro thought, watching as Quillen dueled with another opponent, the floor panels shifting with malicious glee beneath them. The drone hovered ominously, a dark portent of sabotage in action. Mistral worked frantically, her brow furrowed in concentration. Come on," she murmured, coaxing the circuitry into something resembling cooperation. In the arena, Quillen was a whirlwind of motion, his movements precise and deliberate, each dodge and counterattack a testament to his survival instincts. But even he could feel the odds stacking against him, the drone's shadow looming large. Then, with an exultant cry, Mistral finally worked her magic. The drone sputtered, jerking wildly before veering off course, its circuits scrambled by Mistral's deft touch. "Got it," Mistral cheered, her relief palpable. "Now it's just him against the rest of the universe." "Which is how we like it," Taro said, unable to hide his grin. "Come on, Quillen, show them what we're made of." With the drone out of commission, Quillen had one less thing to worry about. He lunged forward, using the element of surprise to unbalance a particularly vicious opponent, sending them sprawling onto a trapdoor that obligingly swallowed them whole. The cheers of the crowd were deafening now, a cacophony of disbelief and reluctant admiration. The humans were winning again, and the overseers were going to have a field day explaining this one away. Quillen stood, panting but triumphant, in the center of the arena. "Another day, another near-death experience," he quipped, saluting the audience with all the flair of a man who'd just won a round of Russian roulette. "And our humans emerge victorious once more," the announcer declared, barely masking their own incredulity. "Against all odds, they've conquered the asbestos challenge." Back in the bunker, the mood was celebratory, though tempered with the knowledge of what they were truly up against. Sabotage was a dirty trick, but it was one they'd have to deal with if they wanted to survive. "Nice work out there," Taro said, clapping Quillen on the back as he collapsed into a chair, muscles aching with the adrenaline hangover. Quillen managed a tired grin. "Thanks. And thanks to Mistral for keeping that drone from making me a shish kebab." Mistral waved off the praise, her attention already shifting to the next challenge. "It's not over yet. If they're willing to bend the rules to take us out, we're going to have to stay one step ahead." Taro nodded, the weight of their task settling back onto his shoulders. "We'll need to be smarter, faster, more unpredictable. They won't be satisfied until we're out for good." Quillen stretched, wincing at the litany of bruises that marked his skin like a battlefield map. "Then we give them more than they bargained for. If they think they can push us around, they've got another thing coming. And if all else fails," Mistral added with a mischievous glint, "we'll just have to blow up their plans." Literally, if necessary. The three exchanged a look of shared resolve, their determination a palpable force that defied the odds stacked against them. They had a long way to go, and the path was fraught with danger and deception, but they weren't about to back down now. "Here's to outwitting the bastards," Taro toasted, raising an imaginary glass. Quillen smirked, raising his own phantom glass. And to making them regret ever underestimating us. Mistral joined in, her smile fierce and unyielding. Let's show them what humans are really made of. They sat there for a moment, a trio of defiance in the face of adversity. They were underdogs, targets of a system that wanted them to fail, but they had something the overseers hadn't counted on, a willingness to fight back, to adapt, to survive against all odds. The universe might have been a hostile, indifferent place, but Taro, Mistral, and Quillen were going to make it listen. They were here to stay, and they'd fight tooth and nail for every inch of progress, every victory in this cosmic gauntlet. As they prepared for the next challenge, hope flickered in the dim light of the bunker. They were bruised, battered, but still very much in the game. And they were ready to take on the universe, one sabotage attempt at a time. Welcome to the Galactic Gauntlet's next event, the Klaxon Carnage. The announcer's voice oozed through the speakers, slick with the enthusiasm of someone who clearly despised his job. Prepare your survival instincts and your wills, cause it's about to get deadly. Klaxon Carnage, Quillen muttered, testing the weight of the blade he'd been given. It had the balance of a drunkard on a seesaw. Sounds like a party. Mistral checked her equipment with the grim efficiency of someone who expected it to fail at the worst possible time. Let's just hope we don't end up as the punchline. Taro leaned against the wall, a casual posture that didn't match the anxiety gnawing at his insides. No pressure, right? Just the fate of humanity resting on our shoulders. Again, the arena was a sprawling chaos of obstacles, each designed with the kind of creativity that suggested a sadistic game designer had graduated with honors. Spikes, whirring blades, and pits that seemed to lead into different dimensions filled their field of vision. Well, isn't this a delightful murder garden? Quillen quipped, eyeing a particularly menacing set of rotating blades. Did they hire a serial killer as a consultant? Taro snorted. Wouldn't surprise me. Just remember, we're the underdogs. Everyone loves an underdog, until they get eaten. Mistral gave a tight smile, the kind that hinted at impending disaster. Let's try not to be tonight's special, shall we? Quillen stepped into the arena, flanked by contestants from other species, each uglier and more terrifying than the last. No pressure. He was armed with a weapon that would probably break if he sneezed too hard, but at least he had his wits, which, given the current company, was a considerable advantage. The gong sounded, a reverberation of doom that shook the arena and Quillen's stomach. Then all hell broke loose. Contestants charged, a motley assortment of limbs, claws, and teeth. A particularly brawny Cargathian, a beast with enough muscles to qualify as his own gym, made a beeline for Quillen, snarling like an angry blender. Quillen sidestepped, using the Cargathian's momentum against him, sending the creature careening into a pit filled with what looked suspiciously like electrified eels. "Oops," Quillen said, not sounding sorry at all. Taro, watching from the sidelines, couldn't help but feel a smidge of pride. That's one way to light up the competition. Meanwhile, Mistral was frantically tapping away at her holo display, trying to keep tabs on the sabotage attempts. Looks like they're trying to fry the lights this time. Nothing like a good old-fashioned power outage to up the stakes. Let me guess, Taro said. We can't have nice things. Never, Mistral replied, a hint of amusement tinging her voice as she worked her magic to thwart the saboteurs. In the arena, Quillen was a blur of motion, ducking, weaving, and occasionally dishing out the kind of punishment that left his opponents wishing they'd stayed in bed that morning. But a particularly vicious alien, a creature with more eyes than a conspiracy theorist's fever dream, managed to land a hit, sending Quillen sprawling. He hit the ground hard, air escaping his lungs in a wheeze. Pain radiated through him, a reminder that he wasn't invincible, just incredibly stubborn. "Get up!" Taro's shout cut through the chaos, a lifeline in the maelstrom. Quillen rolled to his feet, vision swimming. The alien loomed over him, ready to deliver the final blow, when Quillen's hand found a jagged piece of arena debris. He drove it upwards with all the grace of a drunken ballerina, but it hit home, sending the alien stumbling back with a shriek. "Sometimes," Quillen rasped, catching his breath, "you just gotta improvise." Mistral's voice crackled over the comms. "Quillen, don't get too comfortable. They've got something big coming your way." Literally. No sooner had she spoken than the floor of the arena began to shift, panels sliding away to reveal a massive creature rising from the bowels of the arena. It looked like someone had combined a centipede with a tank, then injected it with an overdose of steroids for good measure. "The hell is that?" Quillen asked, already knowing he wasn't going to like the answer. "Bad news," Taro replied, hands clenched, white-knuckled. "Just like everything else here, the centitank charged, its many legs skittering across the ground with a sound that echoed through the arena. Quillen moved, a blur of desperate energy, trying to stay one step ahead of the creature's snapping mandibles. "Any bright ideas?" Quillen panted, ducking under a swipe that would have taken his head clean off. Mistral's voice was tense. "Working on it, just keep moving." Easier said than done, Quillen thought, dodging death by inches. He could feel his energy waning, the cumulative toll of the arena catching up to him. But the thought of failure, of losing everything they'd fought for, drove him forward. Taro's voice came through the comms, a lifeline. "Quillen, there's a control node on its back. If you can get to it, you might be able to shut it down." Quillen glanced at the massive beast, considering the logistics of climbing a living tank while avoiding becoming its next meal. "Sure, piece of cake," he muttered to himself, eyeing the writhing mass of legs and teeth. He made a dash towards the creature, using the debris and obstacles as cover. His heart pounded in his chest, a relentless drumbeat of adrenaline and desperation. The creature lunged, and Quillen leapt, grabbing hold of one of its armored plates and hauling himself upwards with all the grace of a man clinging to a lifeline. The world blurred as he climbed, the creature thrashing beneath him in a frenzy. Quillen reached the control node, a cluster of exposed circuitry nestled between armored segments. He yanked a cable free, sparks flying, and the creature shuddered, its movements faltering. "Almost there," he grunted, pulling another cable, feeling the machine beast slow beneath him. Mistral's voice was a bomb over the comms. "That's it, Quillen, you've got it." The centitank gave a final shudder before collapsing, its many legs splaying out in defeat. Quillen slid off its side, landing heavily on the ground. He lay there for a moment, just breathing, savoring the small victory amid the chaos. The crowd erupted, their cheers a discordant symphony of disbelief and reluctant admiration. Against all odds, the humans had triumphed once again, though not without cost. Taro and Mistral rushed to meet Quillen as he staggered out of the arena, each step a reminder of the bruises and exhaustion that weighed him down. "You're still in one piece," Taro said, helping him to a seat. "Mostly." "Yeah, well," Quillen replied, wincing as he moved, "thought I'd give survival a shot. Turns out it's harder than it looks." Mistral's expression was a mix of relief and exasperation. "You scared us back there, you know." "Wouldn't be the first time," Quillen smirked, though the effort cost him. The atmosphere in the bunker was subdued, the adrenaline of victory tempered by the knowledge of what lay ahead. The stakes were high, and the alien overseers seemed determined to stack the deck against them. "What's our next move?" Quillen asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. Taro's face was grim, the weight of leadership a mantle he wore grudgingly. "We keep going. We can't afford to lose focus now." Mistral nodded, though doubt shadowed her eyes. "And we need to be ready for whatever they throw at us next. They're not going to play fair." Quillen sighed, the fatigue settling into his bones like an unwelcome guest. "When do they ever? But if they think we're just going to roll over, they are in for a surprise." The three of them sat in silence, the enormity of their task stretching before them like a vast, uncharted expanse. They were battered and bruised, but the fire of defiance still burned brightly in their eyes. "We're not out of this yet," Taro said, his voice a quiet declaration. "Not by a long shot." Quillen chuckled, a sound that was equal parts humor and resignation. "Guess we'll just have to keep giving them hell, one round at a time." The universe had cast them as the underdogs, the species meant to fail. But they'd proven time and again that they were more than the sum of their parts. They were human, stubborn, creative, and irreverent to the core. And they weren't about to let a little thing like the fate of their species stop them from fighting back with everything they had. Quillen limped into the bunker, the adrenaline from the arena fading faster than an ice cube in hell. The grimy walls hummed with the collective energy of nerves and desperation. "Well, that was a barrel of laughs," he said, flopping into a chair that protested his weight. His body felt like a poorly assembled puzzle, some pieces missing, others forced into places they clearly didn't fit. "Next time, try not to tango with a centipede on steroids," Mistral chided, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of relief. Her fingers danced over the holo display, the flickering screen looking more glitchy than a bootleg video. Taro leaned against the wall, arms crossed as if he could somehow squeeze the anxiety out of his chest. "We need something more than luck, or we'll be splattered across the arena like intergalactic roadkill." "Don't worry, I've got a plan," Quillen said, grinning like a man who just found a bottle of water in a desert. "We'll reprogram the digital Earth itself." Mistral stopped fiddling with the display long enough to give him a skeptical look. "Please tell me you're not suggesting what I think you are." "I'm suggesting exactly what you're thinking. We use our creative advantage to rewrite the rules. You know, hack the system, change the code. Make the arena our playground instead of our grave." Taro lifted an eyebrow, skeptical as ever. "And how do we do that, Mr. Tech-savvy? Maybe write them a strongly worded letter," Quillen shrugged, wincing as his shoulder reminded him of the alien's rather enthusiastic attempt at rearranging his bones. "We improvise, like always. Mistral's our star engineer. She can work with the existing sabotage attempts and give them a tweak or two." Mistral looked pained. "You mean turn their own sabotage against them?" "That's a bit like pouring gasoline on a fire and hoping it makes it rain." "Exactly," Quillen replied. "When in doubt, add more chaos," she sighed, a sound akin to a rusty gears grinding. "All right, but it'll require precision. They're not exactly leaving their systems open for us to toy with." "Good thing we've got you, then," Taro said, flashing a rare smile that looked as out of place as a dandelion in a minefield. Mistral rolled her eyes but defrosted slightly. "Fine, but if this goes sideways, I reserve the right to say I told you so over your charred remains." "Deal," Quillen said. "Let's get started before I change my mind and decide that being mulch for alien flora is a better career path." They gathered around the holo display, which flickered ominously, as if sensing it was about to be violated in ways it could never have imagined. Mistral's fingers flew over the keys, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Think you can turn their fireworks into a light show instead of a death trap?" Quillen asked. "Watch me," she replied, her voice steely with determination. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the bunker and Mistral's rapid typing. Taro paced like a caged predator, casting anxious glances at the door as if expecting an alien SWAT team to burst through at any moment. "How's it looking?" he finally asked, breaking the tension. Mistral didn't look up, like trying to knit a sweater out of barbed wire. "But we're getting there." Quillen leaned back, trying to ignore his aching ribs. "Just remember, we're not looking for a masterpiece. We just need the system to glitch enough to give us an edge." She nodded, eyes locked on the screen. "Right, just a little chaos sprinkled liberally." Quillen watched her work, marveling at her ability to find order in what looked like a digital hurricane. "You know, if this engineering thing doesn't work out, you could always consider a career in hacking," Mistral snorted. "Oh sure, and maybe I'll take up skydiving without a chute while I'm at it." Despite the gravity of their situation, Quillen couldn't help but chuckle. Skydiving might be safer. Taro finally stopped pacing, his expression one of reluctant hope. "If we pull this off, we'll have a real shot." "But if we fail, then we go out in style," Quillen said, his voice a mix of bravado and resignation. "Ready or not," Mistral said, stepping back from the holo display, "we've got a new plan." Quillen's eyes sparkled with something dangerously close to optimism. Let's hope our alien buddies aren't too keen on reading the fine print. The next morning, the arena loomed before them once again, a monument to sadism and competitive spirit. The air was thick with anticipation and the kind of dread that usually precedes volcanic eruptions. "Back for more, I see," Taro said as they prepared to enter. Quillen grinned, trying to ignore the gnawing anxiety curling in his stomach like a particularly malicious parasite. "What can I say? I'm a sucker for punishment." "Ready?" Mistral asked, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "As I'll ever be," Quillen replied, adjusting his armor. It was dented and worn but had the distinct advantage of being better than nothing. They stepped into the arena and the crowd's roar was like a living thing, hungry and insatiable. The obstacles were the same, deadly and practically frothing at the mouth for blood. The gong sounded, a clarion call for chaos. They moved as a unit, each mindful of their roles in this madcap dance of survival. Quillen darted through the obstacles, his movements a mix of desperation and expertise. He could feel the eyes of the crowd on him, 1,000 gallons of pressure weighing him down. Initiating the program, Mistral's voice crackled through the comms, bringing a strange sense of calm in the storm. The arena flickered, the lights dimming and the obstacles hesitating like drunken dancers who forgot the steps. Quillen seized the moment, moving with the kind of reckless abandon that comes from knowing you have nothing to lose. "Nice trick," Taro said, his voice tinged with admiration as he took advantage of the confusion to dispatch a particularly aggressive alien with more limbs than decorum. "Just a little digital finesse," Mistral replied, her voice smug. Quillen felt a surge of hope, his confidence returning with every glitch in the system. The obstacles that had once seemed insurmountable were now faltering, their deadly precision turned into chaotic flailing. "Keep it up, Mistral," Quillen urged, weaving through the arena like a dancer in a mosh pit. "Working on it," she replied, her voice steady despite the pressure. The aliens in the arena were floundering, their usual strategies rendered useless by the system's erratic behavior. Quillen took full advantage, dispatching enemies with a combination of wit and improvised weaponry. "How are we looking?" Taro called out, ducking under a swinging blade that had decided to take a siesta mid-swing. "We're holding," Mistral replied, her voice tinged with satisfaction. "But this won't last forever." "Long enough for us to make it count," Quillen replied, a grin splitting his face despite the chaos. The arena was a cacophony of malfunctioning machinery, confused aliens, and the triumphant cries of humans who refused to submit. Quillen's heart pounded in his chest, a rhythm of determination and defiance. "Incoming," Mistral warned, her voice sharp with urgency. Quillen turned, spotting a creature lumbering towards him, its eyes blazing with the kind of malice that usually preceded a very bad day. "Got it," Quillen muttered, bracing himself. The creature lunged and Quillen moved, his body a blur of motion. He ducked, dodged, and finally, with a maneuver that was more luck than skill, he sent the creature sprawling into an errant pit. Taro's voice rang out, a laugh that was more relief than humor. "Nice one, Quillen. Getting the hang of this, huh?" "Yeah, well, practice makes perfect," Quillen replied, breathless but alive. The arena flickered again, this time more violently. The system was fighting back, trying to regain control, but Mistral's handiwork held firm, buying them precious time. "Almost there," Mistral said, her voice a lifeline over the comms. Quillen nodded, though she couldn't see it. They were close, so close, and the thought of victory was like sweet nectar on his tongue. "Keep pushing," Taro urged, his voice a rallying cry. And push they did. Through the chaos, the confusion, the clamor of an arena determined to see them fail. They pushed with everything they had, driven by the knowledge that this was it, do or die, win or lose. Finally, with one last shuddering gasp, the arena systems gave in to Mistral's tampering. The obstacles halted, the lights dimmed, and the aliens paused, caught in an unexpected ceasefire. Silence fell over the arena, broken only by the ragged breathing of the contestants. Then slowly a cheer began to rise, a sound of disbelief and admiration. Against all odds, against every expectation, the humans had turned the tables. They had taken the chaos and made it their own, had used their creativity to carve a path through the madness. Quillen stood there, chest heaving, heart pounding in triumph. He looked up at the crowd, at the aliens who had seen them as nothing more than a joke, and grinned. "We did it," Mistral breathed, her voice alive with an emotion akin to joy. Taro clapped Quillen on the back, his face alight with the rare glow of victory. Not bad for a bunch of underdogs. Quillen shrugged, though the movement sent a fresh wave of pain through his battered body. Just another day in the life, right? As they walked off the field, battered and bruised but victorious, they knew that this was just one step in a long journey. The fight was far from over, the challenges still daunting. But for now, they had won. They had shown the universe what humans were capable of, that they were more than just clever apes floundering in the cosmic tide. And that, for the moment, was enough. The arena loomed like a bad dream someone decided to recycle. Quillen, Taro, and Mistral stood at its entrance, the metallic echoes of prior chaos still reverberating in their ears. Today was the Klaxon Carnage, a name that promised more than just a headache. The stakes were higher than a paranoid stoner at a UFO sighting. "Remember, this isn't just about surviving," Quillen said, as if reminding them not to spill coffee on a white shirt. "It's about winning. Win or die trying," Taro muttered, adjusting his armor that had seen better days, or at least less lethal ones. More like the universe's worst motivational poster. Mistral snorted, her face a blend of determination and exasperation. "Inspiring stuff, truly." "I can feel the failure already running away in tears." The gate creaked open, the sound like a giant's rusty hinges groaning back to life. They stepped in, met by a chorus of jeers and cheers from a crowd that had apparently decided not to evolve beyond the Roman Colosseum mentality. "Look at them," Quillen remarked, nodding towards the alien spectators with a grin that was more hunger than humor. "Nothing like a bunch of tentacles and scales to make you feel at home." "Yeah," Taro replied. "Home sweet death trap." The klaxon blared, a sound engineered to make your teeth itch and your bladder question its loyalty. The ground vibrated as the arena transformed, shifting like the worst case of vertigo imaginable. Walls sprouted spikes, floors became conveyors of doom, and platforms raised and lowered with the random indecision of a drunk elevator operator. "Time to work your magic, Mistral," Quillen said, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. She nodded, fingers dancing over her portable holo display, the device flickering more violently than a strobe light at a rave. "Let's see if we can give the system another case of the hiccups." As she worked, Quillen and Taro moved into action, a combination of instinct and sheer audacity guiding their steps. They were the only humans in a game designed by creatures that probably saw humans as a particularly clever form of snack food. "Quillen," Mistral's voice crackled over the comms, "I've got a surprise for them. Just keep them busy." "Busy." "With this crowd, I feel like a steak at a vegan rally," Quillen replied, narrowly evading a set of blades that decided to moonlight as helicopter props. Taro was less about dodging and more about introducing his fists to any alien foolhardy enough to get close. "Consider them entertained," he said, tossing a Cargathian into a pit with a flair that would make a wrestler blush. A sudden lurch in the arena's structure signaled Mistral's handiwork. Platforms wobbled, obstacles hesitated, everything a little less murderously enthusiastic. The aliens faltered, trying to recalibrate their strategies in a world that no longer obeyed its own rules. "Nice work," Quillen said, his voice a rare mix of admiration and sarcasm. "You've turned it into a cosmic funhouse, minus the fun." Mistral chuckled, the sound tinged with pride. "Stick around, there's more where that came from." Quillen used the chaos to his advantage, weaving through the mayhem with the kind of reckless elegance that comes from understanding how close you are to becoming a statistic. An alien lunged, a mass of bristling limbs and bad attitude, but a well-timed dodge sent it careening into a wall, the sound of impact oddly satisfying. "You're clear," Taro called, watching Quillen's back. "For now, anyway." Much appreciated, Quillen replied, scanning the arena for their next obstacle. This has to end soon, right? Don't jinx it, Mistral warned. I've got the system on a leash, but it's a short one. Long enough to hang ourselves with, Taro muttered, smashing an overly ambitious creature with more enthusiasm than brains. The arena shifted again, a final desperate bid by the system to regain control. But Mistral held firm, her handiwork converting the arena into a malfunctioning parody of its former self. Lights flickered, obstacles stalled, and the aliens found themselves embroiled in confusion. Time to finish this, Quillen said, spying the final hurdle, an overzealous machine that looked like it had been designed by a committee of sadists. Leave it to me, Taro said, grinning like a kid who just found out dessert was mandatory. Quillen watched as Taro charged, a human missile of muscle and grit. The machine reacted, too little too late, its defenses faltering under the onslaught. Taro was a force of nature, relentless and unyielding, and soon enough, the machine was reduced to a heap of sparking, harmless metal. That one's for all the lousy mornings, Taro panted, wiping sweat from his brow. And sleepless nights, Quillen added, pulling him back before the arena decided to give a last hurrah. The final klaxon sounded, the arena grinding to a halt. Quillen, Taro, and Mistral stood together, battered but unbroken, as the crowd's chant grew into a crescendo of disbelief and admiration. Against every odd, they'd turned the tide. Look at that, Mistral said, her voice a mix of awe and exhaustion. They're cheering for us. Probably astonished we haven't self-destructed yet, Taro grinned, leaning on Quillen for support. Quillen's eyes scanned the arena, the alien organizers now a gaggle of perplexed figures, their plans dismantled by human creativity and stubbornness. And they said we couldn't play nice. The victory meant more than just survival. It was a statement. Humanity wasn't just a species of reckless dreamers. They were a species capable of bending the rules, rewriting the game, and surviving the madness of the universe. As they left the arena, triumphant, Quillen paused, turning to look back one last time. You know what this means, right? Mistral and Taro exchanged glances, a mix of relief and anticipation on their faces. The FTL ban, Mistral said, the hope in her voice undeniable. Quillen nodded, a rare smile breaking through his usual cynicism. Lifted, we're back in the game, folks. Taro clapped a hand on his back, his grin as infectious as a plague. Now let's go home and remind them what humans are really made of. As they walked away from the arena, the burden of the universe lifted, at least for the moment. The galaxy had underestimated them, and now it was their turn to show the cosmos what happened when you let humans off the leash. For now, they had won. They had shown what human creativity, grit, and a healthy dose of insanity could achieve. The universe was big, dangerous, and indifferent, but so were they. And that, for now, was enough. The aftermath of the klaxon carnage was a bit like waking up after a particularly questionable night out, head spinning, body aching, and an overwhelming desire to pretend none of it ever happened. But here they were, standing in the aftermath of their unlikely victory, with the universe finally paying attention for the right reasons. The arena, now a mess of malfunctioning machinery and confused aliens, was somberly quiet. The echoes of violence still hung in the air, but there was something new, a respect that hadn't been there before. Quillen, Taro, and Mistral were heroes, at least for the moment. Not that it meant much when you still had to find your way back to the grimy hole you called home. Well, look at that, Quillen said, his voice dripping with satisfaction as he surveyed the arena. We finally had a productive day at the office. Taro chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound that seemed to come from somewhere beneath his battle-worn armor. If only every day could be so. Invigorating, he replied, a hand going to his side where an alien had decided to test his spleen's resilience. Mistral adjusted the holo display, the device now looking deceptively benign. You mean filled with death traps and murderous aliens? Yeah, I could do without that, thanks. Quillen shrugged, eyeing the alien organizers who were still trying to figure out how they'd been outmaneuvered by a species better known for Netflix binges than cosmic warfare. If nothing else, we've proven that humans are more than just fleshy punching bags, and that we can turn an arena into a scene from a particularly violent slapstick comedy, Taro added, watching as a pair of Cargathians tried and failed to regain their dignity while slipping on the remnants of their dignity. Mistral looked at Quillen, a sly smile playing on her lips. So what now, fearless leader? Do we get medals, or just more unwanted attention from the galaxy's bureaucrats? Neither, if I have anything to do with it, Quillen replied, turning toward the exit. Let's get out of here before someone decides to change the rules again. The walk back through the corridors beneath the arena was another exercise in dodging suspicious glances and the occasional hostile stare. Their victory hadn't exactly made them friends. Humanity's unexpected rise to prominence was bound to ruffle a few scales, feathers, and whatever else the galaxy's denizens sported. So, what's the plan, Quillen? Mistral asked as they made their way through the labyrinthine corridors, the dull thrum of alien machinery, a constant reminder of how far they were from home. Get back to Earth, reprogram the damned digital locks on FTL, and then hope the universe is as forgiving as we're optimistic, Quillen replied, his tone suggesting he wasn't counting on much of either. Taro glanced at a particularly disgruntled-looking alien passing by. You think they're going to make it easy for us, Quillen chuckled, a dark, humorless sound. Easy? In what universe? We'll be lucky if they don't send an envoy of angry bureaucrats to question our methods. Mistral shook her head. As long as they're not sending another alien death squad, I'll consider it a win. As they navigated the corridors, Quillen couldn't help but notice how their victory had shifted the atmosphere. The aliens they passed seemed more cautious, less dismissive. There was still plenty of distrust. Old habits die hard, after all, but there was a grudging respect, too. Not that it would last once humanity started poking around in places it wasn't wanted, but for now it was something. Think we'll get a hero's welcome back home? Taro asked, a wry grin on his face. Hero's welcome? Maybe a hero's tax audit, Quillen replied. But at least we won't be scorned for staying on Earth anymore, Mistral snorted. With our luck, they'll probably just ask us to sign up for another suicidal mission. Wouldn't be the first time, Quillen said, pushing open the last door that led to the exit. Come on, let's go before someone changes their mind about letting us leave. The hangar bay was bustling with activity, as aliens of every shape and size went about their business. Their ship, a patched-up relic of human engineering named the Rust Bucket, stood out like a sore thumb among the sleek alien vessels. It seemed like the perfect metaphor for humanity's place in the galaxy, outmatched, outgunned, but stubbornly holding its ground. Home sweet home, Taro remarked, eyeing their vessel with a mix of affection and resignation. Mistral tapped her holo-display, the device humming softly. Let's just hope it doesn't fall apart on the way back. Optimism, that's what I love about you, Quillen said, giving her a pat on the shoulder as they approached their ship. The Rust Bucket's engines roared to life, a cacophony of sound that suggested it was as ready to leave as they were. As they lifted off, Quillen allowed himself a moment of reflection. They'd done it, they'd beaten the odds, won the Klaxon carnage, and showed the galaxy that humanity was more than just a footnote in the cosmic ledger. So, what do we do with our newfound fame? Mistral asked, as they soared through the hangar bay doors and out into the vastness of space. Quillen leaned back in his seat, a rare smile on his face. Live long enough to enjoy it, I suppose. Maybe make a few more waves. You mean cause more trouble? Taro interjected, a mischievous glint in his eye. Isn't that what we do best? Quillen replied. Besides, someone's got to keep the universe on its toes. As they left the planet behind, the reality of what they'd achieved began to sink in. The FTL ban was lifted. Humanity was free to explore the stars once more, and they were at the forefront of that exploration. Sure, The galaxy was big, scary, and filled with things that wanted to eat them, but that had never stopped humanity before. "Think they'll actually let us play with the big toys now?" Mistral asked, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Quillen shrugged. "Maybe. But if not, we'll just have to build our own." Taro laughed, the sound echoing through the cockpit. "Like that's ever stopped us." As they traveled through the void, the stars stretched out before them like a tapestry of possibilities, each one a reminder of the adventures that awaited. Humanity was no longer tethered to their tiny blue orb, and the universe had just become a whole lot more interesting. "So who's up for breaking a few more rules?" Quillen asked, his gaze fixed on the stars. Mistral smirked, adjusting her holo display. "You know me, always game for a little cosmic mischief." Taro nodded, a determined glint in his eyes. "Count me in. Let's show them what humans are really made of." And with that, they set their course for Earth, leaving behind a universe that was still reeling from their unexpected triumph. For now, they were free, and that freedom tasted sweeter than victory itself. As the rust bucket hurtled through space, Quillen couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The universe was vast and uncharted, filled with dangers and opportunities in equal measure. But for the first time in a long time, they were ready to face it head-on. Their victory at the Klaxon carnage was just the beginning. Humanity had been underestimated for far too long, and now it was their time to shine. They'd shown the galaxy what creativity, determination, and a healthy dose of insanity could accomplish. "Here's to new beginnings," Quillen said, raising an imaginary glass in a toast. Mistral and Taro joined in, their voices filled with the promise of adventure. To new beginnings. And as they sped toward the future, the stars lighting their path, they knew one thing for certain: the universe would never be the same again. Because humans, once underestimated, had finally found their place among the stars, and they were here to stay. Humanity's journey was only just beginning. The universe was vast, but so was their ambition. And with every challenge they faced, they would rise, ready to prove once again that humans were more than just survivors. They were explorers, innovators, and the universe's most unpredictable players. For now, the galaxy was theirs to explore, and they intended to make the most of it. The stars beckoned, and they were more than ready to answer the call. And so they flew onward, toward whatever awaited them in the great unknown, ready to tackle whatever challenges lay in their path. Because they were human, and that meant never backing down, never giving up, and always pushing further than anyone thought possible. The universe was vast, and their journey was far from over. But together, they were unstoppable. Together, they were human, and that was more than enough.